You're listening to the Radius Church podcast, recorded live each Sunday in North Hollywood, California.
Good morning. This Sunday has got the odds stacked against it. In about, 40 minutes, we'll see an influx of people who were unaware of daylight savings time, and we will shame them the moment they walk in. We got coronavirus fears that are keeping some people at home, and thank you if you're experiencing symptoms and you stayed at home and you're listening to this after the fact on the podcast. We had the LA Marathon, which is a great event in our city, but creates some traffic challenges in a city with plenty of traffic challenges. Did anybody already run the marathon, make great time, and then show up to church? No, you didn't. Really? You should have kept it going. They all would have believed it, man. Did you say, of course not? Hey, and leave it to the patriarchy to celebrate International Women's Day by taking an hour away from you. You're all thinking it. That's the most political statement you will ever hear me say from this stage, probably. But it is International Women's Day, and we were led this morning in music by an all-female band, crushing it. They were just a good band. And after hearing them and singing along with them this morning, I think, guys, let's just sit it out for the rest of the life of Radius. And our drummer this morning, Brittany, so guess what? So here's, some of you know this. We just moved to this high school a few months ago, but before that we were down the street, we were on Lancashire next door to a place called Joe Coffee. Incredible spot, burned like so many of those businesses over there. And Brittany, the only way I knew Brittany before this morning was she's my favorite barista there, so incredible pour over. And then, she's also a monster drummer, so she was in the first service, I think. Brittany, if you can hear this, we love you, you're incredible. Anyway, we're really glad that you're here, and if you braved all of those challenges and made it to Radius this morning, then there's like a special miracle waiting for you. I don't know. You know, Jesus never invited anybody to be a Christian. It wasn't a term he used. That was actually a term that showed up later, and it was used as an insult because it meant little Christ, and that was not a compliment when people were first hurling it at people following Jesus. Instead, Jesus invited people to live life differently, invited them to a different kind of life, and he claimed it was the best way to live. Even if it seems counterintuitive, it was the best way to live. And it was backwards. It was certainly backwards from ordinary. Jesus called it the kingdom. That's the term he used to describe it. It is so backwards that the way we want to teach through his concepts is by flipping the word kingdom around. We're going to call it the MODGNIK way of living life. And we're also going to make that into an acronym, each week revealing a different feature of the best way to live, inviting you into it, not commanding you to do it, and you can consider for yourself if it really is better than normal, the best way to live. And even though it seems backwards at first, it still seems like music to our ears thousands of years, 2,000 years after the fact, because it promises to reduce things like hate and abuse and prejudice and even hunger and pain in the world. And if we get more of that in our age, it certainly would feel a little bit more like heaven, which is why Jesus, when he taught us how to pray, he included that kind of vocabulary in there. He said, God, I want your kingdom to come. I want your will to be done. I want life as you know it on earth as it is in heaven. And maybe that's something you want too. We live in a deeply divided time. That's not a profound observation. It's something we're all very aware of. And so it might be encouraging to know that there is something I think we can all agree on, and people from every side of every aisle can agree on. In 1993, there was this historic gathering of 143 religious leaders from all stripes, Muslims and Sikhs and Buddhists and Christians and Jews, in this room together, and they wanted to develop consensus around a global ethic. No matter what we believe in our faith traditions, is there something that we think we all agree would be better for the world, a morality that would be better for the world? And they were able to decide. There is a global ethic, something that we think everybody, if they lived towards this goal, the world would become a better place. And here's where we first hear that ethic described. Do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. Jesus said it. And they all agreed from all different backgrounds and moral teachings from each tradition, this is the best. If we all choose to keep this rule, the world would be a better place. In fact, it makes sense that it's called the Golden Rule. You've probably heard it before, some version of it before. And I think everybody can agree on it. And I'll prove it to you. A couple weeks ago, some friends came over to our house, and we have an Alexa at home. And they wanted to play that game where you ask your robot a question to see if it, like you test it to see if there's something it can't answer. I don't know if you play this game. And one of the questions they came up with was, Alexa, when will you die? Super morbid. We're not friends with them anymore. We thought, well, maybe that'll trump or stump Alexa. And she had a response to that. And her response was, no one can know that. The secret is to enjoy every day and be kind to others. Even robots agree that this is the best way to live. Now, understanding that idea is simple. It's a pretty simple concept. Wanting more of the world makes sense. Living this out is nearly impossible. In fact, if we were to look at most of the way we treat each other and our behavior, especially when we're at our worst, I think we would all fail under the scrutiny of the Golden Rule. We usually keep something slightly less than this. If you do a little digging at this leadership summit that was created in 1993, they also voted on other rules that they characterized as slightly less than the Golden Rule. In fact, they came up with one that was called the Iron Rule, and the Iron Rule was do unto others before they do unto you. This actually comes from some philosophical backgrounds. I call this the playground rule. I'm going to kick you before you kick me. But this also is what's behind our cancel culture. Before I seek to understand you, I'm going to call you a hater and shut you out of my life. Before you can do any other damage or what I perceive as damage, I'm going to cut you out of my life. They also voted on something that they call the brass rule. Do unto others exactly what they do to you. Do unto others exactly what they do to you. This is the quid pro quo. I'll serve you as long as I'm getting something out of it. You serve me. But that also means if you lie to me, then I am justified in lying to you. You cheat me, I'm justified in cheating you. I'll forgive you as long as I know you really are sorry or you've paid it off or you confess in a way that satisfies me. That's called the brass rule. There's another rule that actually is the most common in my experience, and they voted on it and called it the silver rule. Do not do unto others what you do not want them to do unto you. Now, most lanes of faith and moral teachings, they would adhere to this. It sounds very enlightened. In fact, I would assume some of us think that this is what the Golden Rule actually means. But this rule was around long before Jesus gave us the Golden Rule. You see this show up in the Code of Hammurabi, that's centuries before Jesus. This is what's behind Google's original ethic. You might have heard that when they just said, don't be evil. That was their battle cry. Google, don't be evil. You've heard this before, I think, in conversations. There's a version of this that sounds like, live your truth, just don't hurt people. Believe whatever you want to believe, just don't cause harm. And the world would be a better place if people adhered to that for sure. But all this does is tell us to avoid evil. It does not inspire us to inject good. You know, I won't kill my neighbor, but I don't have to wave at him. I won't steal from her, but I also don't have to give up my seat. That's why the Golden Rule wins out, because the Golden Rule, and this is the challenge of it, is calling us as a species to proactively, creatively inject good into the world before, or even if we never, get that same good invested in us. I will proactively seek to provide good, provide value, provide healing, provide love into the world without strings attached, without expectation that it's going to come back to me in return. Forget karma. I just want to serve. I want to provide good. And Jesus teaching this concept reveals the second quality of the best way to live. The best lives put others first. Last week we revealed that the best lives realize that more is actually less. So you might, out of fear, try to scramble and hoard and protect and secure and amass something in your life. But we all know what it's like to get more and more of something we thought we needed, and it pays off less and less. Emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually pays off less and less. Jesus reveals that it's a dead end, it's a trap. You don't have to live like that. Today, I want to describe practically what it really means for us to accept the challenge, be invited into the best way to live by putting others first. But today, and I'm not going to do this for the rest of the series, I'm going to reveal this quality in tandem with the next quality, and I'll tell you what that is in just a minute. Because the two of them together produce the best way to live. And we want to put others first. We think this is a good idea, but each of us runs into a little snag that the next quality helps relieve us of. We don't want to admit it, so I'll just admit it for us. I am on a secret greatness quest for myself. Joseph Barkley, when I really think about it, I want to know that I'm important. I want to know that I'm significant. I want to know that I matter, right? I want to know that my life means something. You don't want to admit it, so I'll admit it for us. We all envision our funeral being just a series of people walking by that casket and being like, here lies an incredible human being. Because they are alive, the world is a better place. Or because they lived, I am a better person. They came, they saw, they conquered the world. Or they produced great kids. Or they were just so attractive. What a horrible thing to say at a funeral. That's all anybody says at your funeral. You have not lived. Ooh, that's another sermon. We all have that deep longing. But I'm going to level with you today, free you a little bit today, that you do not have to keep that quest secret any longer, because I think it's God's fault. I look at you and I think, you're not an accident. You were not thrown together. Your life is meant to have a purpose. I do think you are meant to be significant. And it's the journey towards the discovery of that realization that I think causes us to keep achieving more, or maybe keep refining ourselves, or wanting to improve and wanting to experience more in life. And we've tried to exercise that in some pretty unhealthy ways, I think all of us. We picked up along the way that in order to be great, you have to achieve a certain thing, or produce a certain thing, or look a certain way, climb up a certain ladder. Your life has to be kind of up and to the right all the time. Leaves us uneasy the higher we climb on whatever ladder we've decided. Is the ladder really leaning against the right wall? I want to matter, but I want to matter in a way that truly matters. And it might not surprise some of you, but it might surprise others of you that pastors struggle with this a lot. You know, we really do. I know I'm supposed to be spiritually enlightened and moral and all that, but I really struggle with this, the quest for greatness. I was at a meeting with a bunch of pastors on Thursday, a bunch of Los Angeles pastors, and we were talking about how could our churches work together to serve our city. And I had to constantly fight that urge to compare myself with all the men and women in the room the whole time. You know, I wasn't a preacher before social media, but I imagine that same nag was there. You know, before social media, I wouldn't have known how good the preacher was at the church next door. Today, I could jump online and hear an amazing sermon from somebody in like Boise, Idaho. I'm sure she's crushing it up there. We should just watch her video next week, you know? I could leave this space like, man, God did amazing things when we were together. I got to be part of this story, and we baptized this person. Jump online, and there's some guy in Connecticut that preached for like 7 minutes, and 8,000 people got baptized. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm making that up. Maybe I'm not making it up. I have no idea. What is that in all of us? It's like, I just need to be seen. I need to know that I'm okay. You have a version of it, even if yours is an achievement. I'm an Enneagram 3, so that's where mine shows up. But yours shows up somehow, somewhere, some way. I just need to know that I matter. I need to know that people are thankful for what I'm doing. What is it for you? How does it show up? Well, it stems from something truly great about you, even if it shows up in really unhealthy ways. That question of, is this what I'm supposed to live for? Am I important enough? Do I have a purpose? Am I climbing up the right ladder? Is the ladder leaning against the right wall? And it's one of the reasons that we struggle to put others first. Until we figure this out, I'm trying to gain ground in my own story, so forgive me if I don't always do stuff for you, because I really am trying to find my own destiny right now. So I think it's going to be helpful to hear that Jesus actually wants to help you put others first, of course, and at the same time satisfy that God-given ache that you have for significance. It happens in the same way at the same time. And I think after you hear what this looks like, you will probably agree with me that it is the best way to live. I want to give us a little context for this moment in Jesus' life. I want to show you where most of the stuff you've ever heard of Jesus doing actually occurred, where on the map. This is the Mediterranean Sea here. Here's Italy and Egypt down here. I don't know if you can see this. Maybe you can see a little bit better on the screen behind me. Here's Bethlehem way down here at the bottom. That's where Jesus was born. He grew up in Nazareth, which is kind of this region here. But a lot of the teachings that you hear and the miracles you heard about before happened way up here in the Sea of Galilee or near the Sea of Galilee. There's a lot of villages and even encampments up here, and Jesus did a lot of work up there. But 3 times a year at least, he and his disciples and a crowd of people would make a pilgrimage down to Jerusalem, which is down here, because Jesus was Jewish, and this is where all the festivals would happen and some of those traditions, and so they'd come down to Jerusalem. There was this one trip that we hear about in all the biographies of Jesus. His disciples and a big crowd of people, they're following Jesus to Jerusalem in what would become his very last trip there, because he is going to go there to die. That's what's going to happen at the end of this trip. Now, nobody knows that, even though he's hinting at it. On the way there, you can tell that the disciples are really excited because every time we're in Jerusalem, it's popping. Something's going to happen. Last time we're in Jerusalem, huge crowds of people. When we're in Jerusalem, Jesus does some miracles. When we're in Jerusalem, he shames the religious Pharisees, self-righteous stuff. This is going to be awesome. And they're starting to ask questions around, is this the time, is the awesome thing that's going to happen? Jesus is finally going to start gaining ground politically. The attention around Jesus is at a fever pitch. Maybe he's going to unseat the Roman authority that's placed in Jerusalem, and then it can expand from there. Jesus, you've got people behind you. This is where you'll take over the government, and this is finally where we get our freedom back, finally where we get our power back. Of course, Jesus knows something else is going to happen. He's got something else in mind. But it's that expectation that Jesus is going to take over and that he's going to establish his government that leads to this interaction in Matthew chapter 20. Then the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, her name is Salome. She's actually Jesus' biological aunt. The mother of James and John, sons of Zebedee, which is a spectacular name. Anybody named Zebedee here? You, the guy that did the marathon. All right. Came to Jesus with her sons. She knelt respectfully to ask a favor, so you can tell she wants something. Jesus, politely, what is your request? He asked. And she replied, in your kingdom, and again, she's just thinking politically, in your kingdom, please let my 2 sons sit in places of honor next to you, one on your right and the other on your left. Just a mom looking out for her boys. Can my boys have some place of prominence when finally you make Israel great again? Sorry, that was too easy. In the next sentence, but Jesus answered by saying, some of you are just now getting that. But Jesus answered by saying to them, you don't know what you are asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I am about to drink? I know you want to rule, but are you willing to suffer? I love their response. Yeah, we can. Totally. Which is the response that I got from my daughters when we started talking about, do we want a dog? Well, are you going to be willing to wash the dog and feed the dog and clean the poo-poo? Are you going to... Oh, yeah, we can. We totally can. Now, my kids are very responsible. They do that almost always without complaining. They're incredibly helpful. But it's that, we got our eyes on the prize, not really counting the cost of what it's going to take to get there. And it's not surprising that you want prominence or influence, but are you willing to suffer? Because that's what's ahead of you, if that's what you want, and where I'm going. He goes on to say something so sobering. Jesus told him, you will indeed drink from my bitter cup. But I have no right to say who will sit on my right or my left. My Father has prepared those places for the ones he has chosen. Jesus, God the Son, submitting by choice to God the Father to write history. There's a lot that Jesus says right in here, but the part I really want to point out is that Jesus knows something about the future of their lives that they don't know yet. And it would be too discouraging to tell them now, but you will indeed drink from my cup. And James, you're going to be the first one to die because you can't change your story. You've just seen too much. And they're going to pressure you to change your story, and you won't, and they're going to run you through with a sword. John, you're going to get tortured. You're going to start a church, and then they're going to kill people in your church. And then they're going to exile you to a remote island and leave you for dead. He didn't tell them this, but he knew. Like, listen, I can't promise you promotion. I can't promise you a title. I can't promise you a platform or you're ever going to get a microphone, but I can promise you some pain. I can promise you persecution. That's where this is going. Following me is going to guarantee some challenges. Let's be clear. If ever you've gotten the impression from me or from somebody else on the stage that following Jesus is the easier choice, we've lied to you. Following me is going to cause you some discomfort. It's going to cause you pain. It might cost you absolutely everything. Now, the other disciples heard James and John, and they probably put their mother up to it. Like, hey, if we ask, it's going to seem really arrogant. But Mom, if you ask, he might go for it. Like, no, who's going to say no to a mom? The other disciples heard all this. They had some feelings, of course, in verse 24. When the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant. And I know this indignance. This is not indignant like, how dare you, James and John, ask. What they were indignant about is, we didn't think of it first. The mom idea was a good angle. This is the indignance that you feel when you see somebody else running out ahead of you in a way you thought you should achieve. Oh man, I should have taken that risk. I should have taken that job. I should have moved to that city. I should have. But they're there and I'm here. It's that indignance that you feel. And Jesus is like, let's just stop the madness. There's a better way to live. So he kind of calls a family meeting in the next sentence. He says, but Jesus called them together and said, let me tell you what's normal. You're used to this. You know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people. And the officials flaunt their authority over those, and this is an important word, under them. That's how they see people, under them. You know what it's like. You live under Rome. You live under that oppressive thumb of Rome. You know that it's like that? That's normal for Rome, as it was normal for the Babylonians before them, as it was normal for the Persians before them, as it was normal for the Assyrians before them. I know you don't like the political landscape right now. So there are people that are using their power to oppress people or to rule out people, as the politicians did before them, and the politicians did before them, and the King of England did before them, and your last boss did it before your current boss, and your professor did it, and your babysitter did it, and your last pastor did it. You know what's normal. That people will take whatever little power they might have or little privilege that they have, and when they feel scared or they feel small, they will push down other people so that they can feel bigger. You know what it's like to see a husband silence his wife because he's feeling silenced at work. You know what it's like for a wife to mock her husband because she's not feeling powerful or accomplished in some other part of her life. And so she might as well control the thing that she can, knowing he's probably not going to stand up for himself. You know, it's like for kids who believe that they know better than you. And I know that's not my kids, they never believe that. But they don't have the power to drive, they don't have the power to pay the rent, they're probably gonna have to stay under this roof, but they're gonna make your life miserable. They got power to do that, they'll scream at you. And Jesus is saying, I know that's normal, I know that's ordinary, but if you're following me, not so with you. It does not have to be that way. Here in this life, forget normal. Normal is so destructive, normal is so boring. In this way of life, if you're going to follow me, we don't have to climb up or climb over people to find that greatness. We don't have to do it. We don't have to wait for somebody else to serve us before we serve them. We don't have to be understood before we seek to understand. Well, Jesus, that's not fair. Can you believe they believe what they believe? Forget it. I'm not going to pay attention to them. The way I was treated, it's not fair that I would have to honor someone who is so discouraging to me. I have to honor somebody who I don't think deserves to have the prominence or the position that they have. That just is not fair. And what Jesus is saying is the life and the love of truly great people does not have to wait for fair. It just loves first. It serves first. In fact, Jesus is saying, if you really want the quickest path to prominence, let me show you how you get there. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first, that's a dramatic claim or a dramatic goal. Whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. Strong words. What he's communicating is however great you think you need to be, that's how much help you need to be. However prominent you think your life should be, that's how much you should be motivated to serve. The path to greatness is through service here. I love that he doesn't rebuke their desire for leadership, desire for influence, desire for significance. In fact, he's honest with them. This is how the true greatness is unlocked in your life. We say this here a lot in Radius, that outside of this community, what's normal is that leadership is a ladder that you climb up to. Here, leadership is an increased burden that you bear. That's the way it works. And we're not making it up because we're noble people. We're just following Jesus into that. In fact, this is how he ends up the teaching here for even the Son of Man, which is a nickname sort of for kingship. See, even the highest authority you can imagine came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. The only thing Jesus was interested in doing with all the greatness and all of his power was rescuing you and me, freeing us from ordinary, freeing us from shame, freeing us from selfishness, freeing us from retaliation. That's what Jesus was interested in doing with the power that he had, freeing us from a smaller life, freeing us from sin, freeing us to know the love of God without shame, without interruption. And there is no shadow he won't light up, no mountain he won't climb up coming after you. So if we're going to follow him, we're going to run into the mess. We're going to run into the pain. We're going to run into the injustice. We're going to run into the prison. We're going to run into the graveyard because we're just following Jesus into the place where life is most needed, love is most needed, help is most needed. The ultimate power the world has ever seen in the person of Jesus became the ultimate servant. And there is no higher position in his kingdom than servant. It is so upside down, but it's the best way to live. I want to follow Jesus in this more than sometimes my courage or my faith or my pride will allow. But I think Jesus would say, I know everything in you thinks, and everybody around you is modeling this ascent into greatness. Like that's how you have to get there. You have to climb and climb and climb and push down and push down and push down. But in my MODGNIK, in my way of life, in my kingdom, there is only one way to the top. First, you need to put others first, and you descend into greatness. You descend into the challenges of the world around you. You descend into the hate, and that's where you unlock your true greatness. And Jesus followers have been doing this ever since Jesus first gave us that vision, that golden rule. Here we are in the middle of some practical challenges with the coronavirus and obviously some panic because in my experience, I've lived enough life to know that we are always looking for something to be afraid of. And this happens to be the recent one. There's good reason to take precautions, and I'm glad that you are, and we're going to model that here as a community to keep people as safe as we can. But I also just want to warn you that to follow Jesus into this is going to sometimes follow us we're going to follow him even into what seems like harm's way. And this might just be another opportunity for us to serve in a way that maybe nobody else has the courage to serve. If you want an interesting history lesson, don't take my word for it. Just Google Christians and plague. And you will find more than one instance where when the world was dying, the Jesus followers were the ones seeking to serve first. In the 1300s, the Black Plague in 2 years took out a third of the world's population. And it was actually the Jesus followers who created some of the first hospitals and hospice care around, particularly in Europe and a little bit in Iceland of all places. Not of all places. Iceland is if anybody's listening from Iceland, it's a wonderful community. Such a patronizing way of saying that. I was just reading recently, there's an Atlantic article that said there was a plague that happened in the 200 AD that the world had not even heard about. There was no record of other than the Christians' record of it. And they found because of several different Christian sources, there was a plague called the Plague of Cyprian. And it took out mass numbers of people, and it was at an even faster clip than the Black Plague. And it was because of the way Jesus followers were caring for people and describing the symptoms that they were seeing that finally they were able to come up with treatment to address this plague. By the way, just coincidentally, at the time when the Plague of Cyprian was taking out most of the developed world's population, there was an explosion of the Jesus movement at the same time as people were following more and more and more into the mess, descending, not into devastation, but descending into greatness. As we do this, as we follow Jesus into the best way to live, I don't want to paint the picture that this is going to always feel heroic. In fact, one of the first things that will come up as you begin to serve other people before you are served is the ugliness of your own heart. This comes up for me all the time, and I want to continue to be transparent with you. A recent example for me, or the one that came up in my mind when I was thinking about it this week, was I was in Guatemala a few years ago, serving in an under-resourced area in Guatemala City and then Antigua. And I remember this one moment where we were invited into a home of this family, and the husband had already died. The father had passed away. It was a mom and 4 kids. And they served us a meal, which for us was a simple meal, but for them was like a Thanksgiving dinner, just to honor us, thinking it was a privilege that we were there. And after we ate, the mom asked if we, the 3 of us there, would pray for her son who was sick. There's also some doctors that were with us on the trip, and they were going to come in after us, of course, and provide medical attention. But we said, of course, we're going to pray for him, little 9-year-old boy. And so we start praying. And while we're praying, I get choked up. I'm moved. I start crying. And we leave the home, and one of the other pastors says, yeah, wasn't that powerful in there? Thinking that that's why I was crying. And what I didn't tell him in that moment, but the reason that I was so moved is because I was so humbled, because while I was praying for this kid, this thought crossed my mind. Isn't this cool of me to do? And it devastated me as I was descending into the pain of the world, that there's still so much entitlement and pride in my heart. That's going to happen for you. It's going to make you mad. You're going to want to retaliate, get revenge, as this fear, the selfishness, the entitlement, this pride starts to bubble up as you are serving people. Like, oh, they should be thankful for this. I don't really want to serve if I can't publicize this on the gram. I don't want to remain invisible. I've already done so much. You're really saying I should do more. That's the first thing that's going to start getting excavated. Excavate. You know the word I'm saying for. Broken up. But it's got to. We've got to get through that thick layer of pride and of entitlement so that we can unearth what makes us truly great. We are here to love, to be an unending source of God's love and help and hope to people who need it, where they need it. Now, as I close, nobody raise your hands, but I just want to give you a chance to reflect on where in your life this comes up, and maybe where first you can start to put others first or continue to put others first and descend into the greatness that God planted in your life. Where is it? Where do you feel like you have to be a hero right now? Or where do you feel like you need to be more recognized or thanked than you are now? And by the way, you probably do deserve to be thanked more than you are right now. You do deserve more recognition than you have now. But it's bugging you. I think that's the place where God wants you to start. People need to honor me more here. I need to be promoted differently here. Where is that at? Does it show up at your house? Maybe it's in your home life. I just need more recognition for everything I'm doing for this family. I need more of it. Maybe it's here at church, like I should have been selected for this, or they should have created an environment for me in this way. Maybe it's here. With your friend group, they're starting to leave you out of things or misunderstand you in ways, and it's creating a lot of tension, or it's at school for you, or maybe it's on set or in the office, I don't know. For me, it shows up in really subtle ways. Subtle ways that I essentially communicate, do you know who I am? Like on the freeway. You know, when I cut you off, it's because I clearly have something important to do. When you cut me off, you're an idiot. It's revealing something. I think there's a better way. Do to others proactively what your pride and your entitlement expects them to do for you. It is the golden rule. This message isn't forget yourself, destroy yourself, hurt yourself, choose harm, unnecessarily. Stop dreaming big. What Jesus is telling us is just get a bigger dream. Dream big on behalf of the people in your life. Dream big so that you can invest in others. Move your ladder from your own achievement and your own significance onto the needs of others. And the more you descend into that, the more free you are to see your own significance and greatness. This is so backwards. Greatness requires mercy. Greatness requires humility. Greatness requires sacrifice, deference. The smaller I become, the greater I'm found to be. But by the way, This is the greatest way to live. It is the best way to live. These are the kinds of lives that are truly great in the eyes of God, and the kinds of lives through whom he loves to do his greatest work. Others first. Descend into greatness. It's the best way to live. Let me pray for you. God, I need more courage than I have to pull this off. I need more faith than I have to pull this off. And so I need you. I desperately need you. As I try to live this out, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of so many, I'm praying on behalf of so many, as I try to live this out, I am constantly fighting that thought. Look at me. Look at me. Look how great I am. God, I want to outpace that pride. So I'm going to have to chase even harder after you. Way out beyond my platform, my pride, my selfishness, into what truly makes being a human great. That we can choose to love with no strings attached. Why? Because God, I can remember that you've already loved me enough. I don't need it from anybody else. Thank you for telling me who I am and what I'm worth. May I be a conduit through which you love the world around me. Jesus, we pray these things in your authority. Amen.
Thank you for listening. For more information, follow us on social media at Radius Church LA and visit us on the web at radius.la.